All right, hey everybody, it's Randy with Direct Action Combat Performance, and I'm here with my buddy Harrison. And for those of you who maybe don't know who Harrison is, all the good videos that you see, the higher quality made videos that you see that have direct action material on it, he's the man behind the lens. He's the man that takes care of the artistic abilities. So he's the owner of Rag and Carbon. Just want to say hi to Harrison. Come over today. We're just going to shoot the shit, have a discussion about whatever comes to our minds, and this is for your guys' pleasure. It's your sheer entertainment. So thanks for doing this, man.
No problem.
All right, so I guess kind of like a podcast, but more just two dudes gonna shoot the shit. So we started talking about this a couple of days ago, where we have some pretty in-depth conversation. I don't think either one of us really are too capable of small talk. We tend to go down some rabbit holes. So today we're gonna start with just putting it out there. The main topic of conversation with a lot of people is COVID, and it's tough to get away from it. It's tough not to talk about it. So we may as well get after it for the first couple minutes and then see how it goes. So what's interesting is we're friends. We hang out on a regular basis, and we also hang out on a professional level. So there's multiple layers to our relationship. And what I find really interesting and unique is, Harrison is not unlike some other friends who I have that are not double vaccinated. And for the record, I am double vaccinated, and we have very similar points of view on some things, but I think it's interesting where what's going on in our society, how it's really created a divide in our social structure with people who are vaccinated and those who are not. So I just want to, maybe just start things off with this, asking Harrison's point of view on the vaccination and why he's choosing not to get it.
Sick. I think for me, with everything, and this, we've had conversations, but with everything with COVID, I think all of the decisions, whether it comes down to the individual decision that you and I are making, or the decision that the politicians are making for society as a whole, I think it all has to be made with all of the information that you can have. Mm-hmm. I think when you think about something as serious as a global pandemic that has legitimate life and death consequences and has the capability to completely change the structure of a society, to make a decision like that because the news has told you to do something or because it's the right thing to do, it's not necessarily the right way to go about making the decision. I think it has to be rooted in science, and not just science that somebody has told you is the science, but science that you've gone to the source documents for, really put in your research time and made a responsible decision. So for me, I'm 29 years old. Not the healthiest person in the world, but I don't have any serious comorbidities. I'm not the unhealthiest person in the world by any stretch. So to me, COVID is just not something I'm worried about. Also just given the way that I tolerate risk, I have a relatively high tolerance for risk. So when I look at the amount of people in my age category with no comorbidities that have died from COVID, I'm pretty comfortable rolling the dice and being it could happen, mm-hmm. but it's more likely to not. It's more likely for it to just be kind of like a flu for me.
Yeah.
And I think one of the interesting things about the vaccine is the information that's on the surface and the information that you are being given by the media. It's very compressed. Everything's boiled down to one kind of purpose statement: the vaccines are safe and effective.
Yeah.
But with any medication, that's not going to be the case for everybody. It might be safe and effective for 99.9% of the population, but there is 1% of the population it's going to affect, or whatever that percentage is. And so for me, I look at the potential side effects from the vaccine, and I personally would just rather take my chances with COVID. And again, I think we've had this conversation too, but when you go into like a discussion with somebody or an argument with somebody or you're making a decision, like you have to go into it thinking like, okay, what factor could change my mind? What piece of information could I garner that like would put me on the other side of the discussion?
Yeah.
And like from the beginning, at the beginning I was really scared of COVID because they were like, it's going to kill 10 to 20% of the population.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, it's the end of the world. Cool. But once like the numbers kind of started to filter in and we started to realize like, it's not as deadly as we thought. It doesn't affect arbitrarily like random demographics. It does seem to be old and sick people.
Yeah.
One of the things that I started researching heavily was, does it stop the transmission of COVID? Because whether I'm worried about it or not worried about it is irrelevant if me getting the vaccine would stop me from giving it to somebody else.
That's fair. Yeah.
Because it's not a serious disease for me. But if I was 84 and had cancer or an autoimmune disease, it would be a very different situation. Mm-hmm. So I never wanted to be that asshole that's just like, yeah, it's not going to hurt me, so fuck you. Like,
yeah.
I don't know if you were expecting profanity or not.
It's all good.
But, like, so I was, from the get-go, I was like, hey, it might not bother me, but, like, I don't want to give it to my parents. Mm-hmm. I don't want to give it to my grandparents. I don't want to give it to someone else's grandparents. So, like, how much does it actually reduce the transmissibility of COVID? And at the beginning, it was very hotly contested.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people were like, it does reduce the spread, like, by a considerable factor. And I was like, everything I'm seeing points to the fact that it does reduce the potential to transmit, but by a very limited factor.
Yeah.
And now it's clearly evident that is the case. Like most of Canada's vaccinated, and the cases are the highest they've ever been. What gives?
What gives?
You know. Yeah. So I guess that's kind of my perspective on vaccinations.
It's interesting because you know. You have your stance on it, and rightfully so. And at the beginning, when you know it was very heavily being pushed by the government, you know everyone's got to get vaccinated, make everything safe. I was a bit hesitant too. I feel like I'm a healthy guy. I take care of myself. You know, the vaccine, much like the flu shot, was not something I was interested in. And then when I quickly realized like my livelihood is really heavily responsible in terms of contracts with military law enforcement training, you know, being an outside contractor now, I realized the writing was on the wall. Like if I didn't get that double vaccination, I wouldn't be, you know, making money and you know, providing a lifestyle, quality of life for my family that, you know, we're looking for. Mm-hmm. So I was kind of like, all right, well, I better get this. You know, reluctantly, you know, I got the double vaccination. The first shot I got made me nervous because for about, I don't know, maybe 6 to 8 hours, I lost my fine motor skills and made me nervous. I didn't say anything to my wife. I didn't want to alarm anybody, but to click a pen, I was having issues to click a pen. I felt my hands and joints were like cramped up, like I was dehydrated. Mm-hmm. And I thought, man, that's kind of nerve-wracking. And then when I woke up the next day, it was gone. So I was kind of like, all right, good. And when I went back for the second shot, I talked to the nurse, who's super sweet. She asked me if I had any side effects, and I said, you know, this is what happened. And she went through a panel of side effects that she had. She was flipping through a binder of potential side effects. And she's like, we were there for probably 15 minutes, and she was trying to find something to match the symptoms that I was sharing with her. And she wrote it down. She's like, well, that one's new. Mm-hmm. And I thought, okay, that's a red flag, you know, because there was a lot of side effects, but nobody seemed to be talking about the side effects, right? Well, so to me, that was a red flag. And then when I got the second one, I was a little bit sick in terms of I felt like I had the flu, but I bounced back quickly. That being said, where we're at now is, you know, as you know, I'm running a training facility. I'm interacting with military, law enforcement, general public folks. And there are people who are resistant and hesitant to get the vaccination, and they're looking for places to train. And once the word is out there, once it's gotten out there, and people are comfortable with the fact that I don't discriminate whether you're vaccinated or not. If you want to train, let's train. Mm-hmm. Because I truly believe the risks are going to be had whether you're double vaccinated or not. And the numbers are speaking for themselves. So there's multiple double vaccinated, triple vaccinated people who are contracting the COVID virus, and they're either bouncing back or they're getting seriously sick. So to me, the vaccine is it's a solution, but maybe not the 100% solution. And what robs me from really having any confidence in it is the government's approach to not really allowing a choice. It's really like kind of pressing people. So it's not cool. It's not somewhere as I thought Canada would be, but here we are.
And that was kind of like my final push over the edge. Like, my initial response when I heard that the vaccine was coming out was, okay, I'll get it eventually. Like, once it's like fully tested. Because the thing that the company Pfizer, like these pharmaceutical companies, like their highest priority is not your health.
That's right.
Like, Pfizer is like the world record holder for the largest settlement ever paid. Like, it is all about the money, like,
life is a business, man. The world that we're living in, everything is a business.
So like for me, I'm like, okay, they got emergency use authorization. They like obviously rushed through the process. Even if everything is going to be like completely stellar, given the COVID risk, I'm still willing to wait a little bit to make sure that there's no side effects. But then when the government is deciding to like completely change the way that our society views a certain segment of the population, take jobs away from people who don't want to get vaccinated, like it became a different thing. And I was like, oh no, I'm for sure not getting it. You know what I mean? Like if you're gonna discriminate based on vaccination status, and if you're gonna literally put the screws to somebody and be like, if you want to keep your job, you better do this.
Yeah.
Like it put me in a different position because like I know lots of people who didn't want to get it but had to get it because of their work or because they wanted to keep their job or because they wanted to, well, they didn't have to, but because they wanted to travel or go to a restaurant.
Yep.
And like I'm one of the few people I know that like will not be affected by not getting it to a point that will make me go get it. Like,
yeah, so one thing that you're fortunate that some others are not is you can work from home, you can work remotely. Some people do have that luxury, but some people do not.
Yeah.
So they're having their hands forced and in a position that maybe they don't want to. And what I find interesting, and maybe if you feel comfortable to talk about it, we can, is for those who don't know, like, you try to join the military, right? Let's walk the dog on that one. So explain to viewers, a gentleman's trying to provide for his family. He's trying to do good things. He's trying to serve the country. And then what happens?
Yeah, so basically, I run a photo printing and framing company. It's predominantly like e-commerce and like small customer appointments. So I feel like I can do my job with no problem without being vaccinated, and that's lucky. But my goal was kind of to transition to full-time military service, and has been for the last 2 years. That's kind of how we met. So I joined the reserves in February of 2020, so 1 month prior to the pandemic's kind of kickoff.
Right.
And what I was planning to do was get trade qualified with the reserves while continuing to run my business and kind of automate it so that it could run when I transitioned to full time. It was very interesting trying to be in a reserve BMQ in a COVID environment. Very different than kind of what I was anticipating. Enjoyed it nonetheless. And then my DP1, which is kind of the second course that you have to go through for infantry, was canceled because of COVID. It was supposed to be in the summer, but long story short, like they were like, we don't care if you're vaccinated. Actually, now we care if you're vaccinated. Actually, now you're not allowed on D&D property if you're not vaccinated. Actually, now you can't be in the army if you're not vaccinated. So I basically was given a choice to get vaccinated or face disciplinary action and then eventually be pushed out of the military. So I chose to release before that was done because maybe I want to get back in when everything is all finished. But like the reason why I made that choice is because it's because of the ethics around everything. Like, yes, I'm fortunate enough to have a job where I can provide for my family and not be forced to do something. But if there's any shadow of a doubt that it could be dangerous or that it's not absolutely cleared all of the safety measures that exist for every other drug, like you can't force somebody to choose between their job and like something that could potentially have lasting like effects on their life or potentially lead to their death. And the pushback is like, well, we want you to get vaccinated because we don't want you to get sick with COVID and die. Because as we know now, like the main benefit of the vaccine is it keeps you out of the hospital.
Right.
But if you're in a demographic that's not going to end up in the hospital anyway, what happens if you end up in the hospital because of the vaccine?
Yep.
And like personal safety and personal health, it has to be like your own individual responsibility. It's not the business of the government.
I agree.
If you are comfortable taking the risk with COVID, diseases have existed for all of human history, and it's a risk we've always had to deal with. Like, the reward of pushing everybody to get vaccinated would be if it really could eliminate COVID and completely stop the transmission. But if it can't, and you're only really making sure that you're going to stay out of the hospital, but the vaccine might give you myocarditis or any of the other potential side effects, like, that has to be, like, that's your own bodily autonomy, and it has to be your choice.
Yeah.
So I guess, like, if the military wanted me to get vaccinated, that's fine. They also may ask me to go get shot at, which is not the safest thing either.
Right.
But what it comes down to for me is, like, I went from a place where I'm like, I would serve and die for this government and this country because it's the greatest country on earth. And the majority, like the major threats to our way of life and our freedom are external. To, like, I think the greatest threat to our freedom and our way of life is our own government now.
Yeah.
And like, I don't want to be the strong arm of that government if, like, let's say, because I was in the reserves, right?
Yep.
Let's say they all of a sudden decide, okay, you're not allowed to leave the city. You have to stay in your city. Who's going to be enforcing that? It's going to be the reserves. And if you get to a point where it's like, all right, we're forcibly vaccinating everybody, it's a stretch, but like with the way things have been going, like I can't in good conscience serve a military that's going to get people fired from their job because they won't take a experimental vaccine.
Yeah, and that is fair, and it's sad at the same time because, you know, the military, from what I know, I've been retired for a couple of years now, but I'm still very much in tune with what's going on. We've got a lot of buddies that are still serving. The military is bleeding personnel in every trade and every element across the board. So they need people. They need good men and women that are willing to step up and serve the country. Every trade, to my knowledge, almost every trade. I don't know the exact numbers, but is undermanned, right? So the numbers are not matching what is required. So now to put on an added layer of scrutiny that is now driving people out that are already serving, or in your case, don't even get a chance to serve because of this situation, where this is where I think, the lack of trust from what the government decisions are being made in conjunction with the lack of courage, and it may come across as an insult, but it's a lack of courage for whatever reason that the senior military is not pushing back and making some changes to find a way where if the Canadian forces need to fall under a different umbrella of acceptance, then so be it. Yeah. We can make that happen. As a nation, we can make that happen. As citizens of this country, we can speak our piece and have our voice heard and make a very wise decision that is going to benefit the majority. But that's not happening. Yeah. So there's a problem. There's a problem at the political level, and then there's a problem at the senior military level. Some people ask me, well, what's the solution? In my opinion, the solution is people that are educated and they've done their due diligence and their homework, step up and make a difference. But it's not happening, and that is problematic. When you have no trust, there's no foundation. Mm-hmm. Think of trust as is the foundation you're going to build a house on, right? So we want the foundation to be solid. If there's no trust, man, you may as well stop building because it's going to crumble. So that's a problem, and I do think it's fixable, and I do think it's relatively simple. We just need good people that are in those positions to step up and be willing to hurt a few feelings, be willing to rock the boat a little bit, be willing to push back, but it's not happening for whatever reason. So it's unfortunate to see guys like yourself who have good intentions and are being kind of railroaded because of really what should be a choice, whether or not somebody wants to get a vaccination or not. So it's a bit unfortunate.
And the thing that was interesting too, like in regards to the military, is I made a point of making my position known to everybody I interacted with on the way out. Everybody I spoke to about it, I was like, I don't think that like government is microchipping us, or if I get the vaccine, I'm sure to die.
No,
I don't mind taking it, but it's the morals around it. Like, if you can't even control what goes in your own body,
Yeah.
what freedom do you have?
Yeah.
Like, it might not seem like a big deal because it's a vaccine that generally seems to be safe and keeps you out of the hospital, whatever. But it actually really is a big deal, because if the politicians that we have elected, who are supposed to serve us, can now force you to put something in your body, like, it's like the worst kind of erosion of freedom that could happen, because it seems like it's with good intentions, but it will have really, really caustic repercussions.
Yes.
And everyone along the line that I kind of explained this to, they're like, well, I respect your opinion, but I disagree. And I'm like, this is the military. Like, this is the organization that is supposed to be dedicated to fighting for and defending our freedoms and our way of life. Like, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms was not written for no reason. And it's not going to protect itself. Do you know what I mean? Like, it takes a level of intentionality and a level of accountability with, like, whether it's top military leadership or top political leadership, or even just, like, the way that we carry ourselves. Like, I know a lot of people who, like, think, you know, that it's kind of nonsense and that the politicians are making bad choices. But if they're not sure of your opinion, they, like, might voice it apologetically, but mostly they'll just keep silent. And, like, I think that that's a huge problem, because it just lets kind of the wave of, like, I hate to say it, but, like, pseudo-authoritarianism just, like, sweep over a country completely unopposed. You know? So
it is a problem. And if people don't start to speak up and push back, and you can do it in an articulated way, like, it doesn't have to be, I'm going to storm Parliament Hill, you know, and, like, no, it doesn't have to be that way, but it needs to be pushed back, where people say, hey, we've lost our voice, and nobody, or nobody's listened to us whatsoever. For an example, in the last, you know, however many months this has been going on now, 2 years, we'll say 2 years and a bit. How many times have you received either anything electronically or by snail mail, you know, from a member of parliament that says, hey man, what are your thoughts on the following, you know, and what would you suggest? Zero. Not one person has knocked on my door, gave me a call, sent me an email, anything in the mail. They're like, what do you recommend? As you know, as a dude that served the country for 21 years, and at the highest level, I saw lots of good leadership, and I saw lots of poor leadership. And I can tell you the difference. The difference between a really good leader and one that is just not there yet. The really good leaders, they ask questions and they listen to the people around them, because they know they're the ones that are getting the job done. Those poor leaders are the ones that are emotionally driven, very ebb and flow. All of their decisions are based on emotion. Very few is articulated or educated or intellectually driven for whatever reason. And those leaders are the ones that do not garnish the trust from the people around them that are going to actually do the job. So I've seen it, I've experienced it. You know, it's left sour taste in my mouth in some past experiences. But the reality is, now what we're facing right now as a society is a country of citizens who are, you know, educated. The information's out there, so they're educated, but they're just not willing to speak up, and that's a problem. That's, in my opinion, that's equally as bad as a dictatorship, which I feel like is happening right now at the government level.
And especially when you, like, extend it to, the information is out there, but a lot of it is labeled misinformation, or a lot of it is, like, reported in a way that is skewed or not reported at all. Like, a good example is, like, a friend of ours was citing a study about something from a certain institution that proved one thing, but she didn't realize that that same institution had released 5 other studies on the same topic that indicated the opposite reality that she was arguing. And, like, I don't know, I think, like, we live in a world that's basically run by social media. Like, everyone is getting all of their information from social media. And if there's only one truth and there's not room for a conversation, you end up here. Because, like, for example, obviously we live in Ontario. Doug Ford goes, it took me 30 seconds to know what to do. Like, that's a huge problem, because if you just keep pushing the same button for a solution that's not working, whether you think that COVID is not a big deal or a very big deal, either way, you're getting to a really bad place. Because if vaccines are extremely safe and effective and work and can completely eliminate coronavirus, that's the best option. But as soon as that's no longer true, you can't keep pushing that button. You have to find another solution. You
That's
have to
right.
be adaptable,
Yeah.
or you're putting everyone in jeopardy. Not just the unvaccinated people who now can't travel, can't go to restaurants, lose their job,
Yeah.
but the people who have serious health risks who deserve a better response than just lock it all down.
Yep. Man, I agree. And 2 years ago, I remember saying, no, I believe that the solution is you lift all restrictions. You lift all restrictions, get rid of the masks, and people are like, that's not a viable solution. I believe it is. I said it 2 years ago, and I'm saying it today, because the reality is people know enough now that if they're super concerned, they're always gonna be concerned, no matter what. So if they choose to, live at home with multiple masks on and not go out anywhere, that's their choice. That's prerogative. But their fear should not be projected upon the rest of us that want to live a healthy, upbeat quality of life. So I truly believe, I said it a while back and I'll say it again. I believe, and to support your point, pushing the same button, hoping for a different result, clearly is not working. So let's try something different. Let's go really, really like to the extreme on the other end. Relieve all restrictions. Get rid of the mask. Let people get back to normal. Let businesses run their businesses how they feel is the safest and the wisest for them. Give the control back to the people. That's what I would recommend as a solution. I know some people watching this will be like, oh man, you're blah blah blah. Listen, I know there's thousands of people out there way smarter than I am, but I'm not an idiot, man, and my eyes are wide open. There's new solutions or a different solution has got to be put in place, and it's got to be done soon, in my opinion.
The thing that I think too is if you are going to open it up and allow people to kind of fend for themselves, if you're concerned, wear your mask, get your vaccine, get your booster. If you're not concerned, run your business, do what you want to do. It doesn't have to be lockdowns or that, nothing else. Instead of spending millions of dollars on making sure that unvaccinated people can't go to restaurants and boosting up this vaccine passport system, invest in healthcare infrastructure. This entire time they've been the hospitals are overwhelmed. There's really not good treatments available in Canada that are available in some states. Monoclonal antibody treatment has shown to be really effective.
Yeah.
If you don't have enough beds, that's way more of a problem than an unvaccinated person eating at a restaurant.
Yes.
Because if I'm at risk and I now have COVID, it's irrelevant how many people are eating at what restaurants.
Yep.
What is relevant is, will I survive? Will I be able to go to the hospital, get a bed, get the treatment that will get me healthy, or is this going to be the end of my life? And I think the reason why we can't have a really nuanced conversation is way larger a problem than just COVID. Nuance doesn't exist in any area anymore. There's no, you have to pick a side, you have to be polarized, you have to choose.
Yes.
That centered balance doesn't exist anymore. And I think with COVID, it's the kind of woke mentality, identity politics mentality, and also our society has just absolutely zero tolerance for the reality of death. If people are dying in car accidents, now cars are illegal. That's not the way you deal with the situation. Yeah. And it may sound callous, but we got really lucky with the coronavirus. Doesn't really affect kids, generally tends to be older, sicker people. Do I want them to die? For sure, no. But it is an inevitable reality for them shortly anyway. I remember when the first thing came out that was saying it's going to be 10 to 20% fatality rate.
Yeah.
Now we're at less than 0.5%.
Yes.
Instead of just killing each other over the insanity of all this and destroying people's businesses' lives and the way that children are being educated and formulating all of the stuff.
Yeah.
We should be whew, we really dodged the bullet on that one.
And what's interesting, I'll go back a piece where, since you talked about the restaurants, which is interesting because one thing that has gotten almost no attention since the beginning of this is what people are doing to themselves, right? The amount of shit food that people consume on a regular basis. truly, I believe the global pandemic, it's not COVID, it's junk food.
Yeah.
And if you were to walk in any store, like, you know, Walmart or any of those stores, there's aisles upon aisles of shit food. And you watch people in the, you know, the grocery stores, and their carts are full of junk. Nobody's talking about that.
Yeah.
And that over time is the accumulation that leads to type 2 diabetes, heart problem, obesity, which compounded with COVID, now you have a serious problem.
Mm-hmm.
But that problem could have been at least mitigated or minimized if people would now, you know, consider what they're consuming. But nobody's talking about it. Nobody wants to talk about that, which is frustrating, man, because we as a society, we can fix this problem ourselves. We are intelligent creatures. We just need to put it in place, you know. So anyway, yeah, man, it's interesting times, and you know, I agree with you. I've never seen the country more divided in all my life, and it's not good. I don't. I know you've heard me say this before. I don't necessarily think that our society is going to hell in a handbasket, but it's in trouble. I now do believe like we are in some serious trouble if we don't start making some serious changes soon, and that's got to be done collectively. It can't be, you know, ones and twos. It's got to be a collective majority to take a deep breath of courage and say, okay, enough is enough. What can I do to help this problem?
Mm-hmm. And I think more people are starting to get there. I also want to say I'm not anti-vax.
Yeah.
I think the reason why human beings' quality of life and length of life is the way it is because the 3 tiers of modern medicine are surgery, antibiotics, and vaccines.
Yeah.
If you're 84, this is a scary time. Like, you're going to want that vaccine. You're going to want the booster. I'm happy it's available for you.
I agree.
You know what I mean?
I agree. Yep, for sure, man. I definitely agree, and you know, that's a valid point for sure. There's things out there, you know, like, you know, maybe not to go down a bit of a rabbit hole, but like mental health is that's a huge beast, right? And it's a very complex subject. But what I find interesting is, you know, when it comes to mental health, how quickly people will be prescribed a drug. And in some cases, people need those drugs for sure. That is helping people 100% live a healthy quality of life. But I also believe that there's a large percent of the population who are consuming prescription medications that don't need it.
Yep.
And there's other forms of, you know, treatment that are being avoided. And I do believe that that's a problem. That's probably going to be a problem for a long, long time. However, just to bring it back, I do agree with you. The vaccine is a good thing for sure, and it is helping, you know, a good majority of the people. I'm not saying that it's not. The problem is not having the choice.
Yeah.
That is a big problem.
And with what you were saying about mental health, like, it comes back to like the only button. Like, I think our society only has one button, and they bought it from Staples, and when you push it, it says that was easy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, if you're depressed because of all kinds of other factors in your life, or anxious because of all kinds of other factors in your life, it's way easier to take a pill and fix your life.
Yes.
Way easier.
Yeah, man.
But it's not the same level of efficacy. You know what I mean?
No,
Like,
it's not. Yeah.
So
I think we need to, as a society, like, we need to embrace working hard. You know, like, there are so many things that we could label, or not label, sorry, but we could jot down. And, you know, how many times have we heard either ourselves say it? I know I'm guilty of it too. Not very often, I'll be honest and proud to admit. But how often have we heard, well, if it's easier, I'll do it that way, right? You know, I want something that's a little bit easier. You know, I want that, but I don't really want it. I don't want to work that hard. It's like, hey, man, like, sometimes to get that thing that you want, it has to be earned, and you gotta get it by putting your head down and grinding. You know, and not everything is meant to be, you know, like, handed to you on a fluffy pillow. Man, it's not reality.
Yeah.
And I think we perpetuated a society like. How many times in the last little while have you heard whatever problems are in the world, it's the millennials' fault? Man, stop that shit. Yeah. It's not millennials' fault. And millennials are doing good things for our society. They think differently. They're very wise and educated in certain areas. So stop shitting on millennials. However, if you want to point the finger at, especially if you're an older generation, point the finger at millennials, how do you think they became that way?
Yeah.
We allowed that to happen, right? So, like, we need to take ownership of it. We need to take some accountability. Like, okay, wait a minute. If we have an opportunity to influence, say, grade school age kids, man, we better be messaging well.
Yeah.
Like, what would I say to, you know, a 7 or 8 year old? I'd say, hey, you want that thing? guess what? It's not being given to you. You've got to work for it. You got to show me that you want to earn it, right? And that starts at a young age, I believe. I think there's maybe a little bit too softness and, oh, just make it easier for everybody. And everybody gets a gold medal for showing up. It's like, fuck, man, that's part of the problem.
Yeah. It's way easier to make the reason for your issues something external rather than internal. It's easier to say, I'm a victim, this is because of whatever, than to look in the mirror and be like, I kind of suck. You know what I mean? Like, I should do some things differently.
Yeah.
Like, it's easy to be like, I'm awesome. It's everyone else is just conspiring against me, and like,
yeah, man. It's, you know, it is crazy times, but I do think, you know, if there's a positive message that I can share, and this is what I'm trying to do, to be completely honest, man. Like, you know, Harris and I will have great conversations. You know, other people will have great conversations, but at the end of the day, like, are we on this planet just to point out all the flaws, or can we do something positive? Can we educate somebody or have a great conversation that will maybe get somebody to think differently? Yeah. Not trying to influence them per se, but maybe just get them to consider a different view. Then to me, that's a positive. That is a win. And really, so, you know, with this conversation today with Harrison and myself, what I'm trying to share with people is like, if you have the opportunity to you know, be kind and share something positive with somebody, there is nothing negative from that. There is no negative consequence from being kind to your neighbor, doing something for somebody else, helping somebody out, or just being a good listener and listen to a point of view that it's okay if you don't agree with it, but just listen to it and maybe consider where that point of view is coming from. So, I mean, today that's kind of my message. Anything you want to close out with, Harrison, by all means, man.
Well, I think if we can get back to the place where like we put kindness first and we like are able to listen to people without feeling like our identity is wrapped up in the ideas that we have. Like, everyone has a different life. Everyone has been through different experiences. And like the way that we move forward as a society is through conversation. Like, I'm not the same person I was 10 years ago.
Amen.
And that's a good thing. The reason for that change is because of people I've interacted with, things I've experienced. Like, to be adaptable and to learn and to grow is one of the things that makes like humanity wonderful. And to just place yourself in a camp and be like, if anyone else thinks differently than me, I don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
Like, not only are you closing yourself off to learning, but you're the thing that you're trying to push forward, you're keeping other people away from that as well.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, if I have a conversation with someone who thinks completely differently than me, but they're nice, and I'm open to having my opinion changed by like legitimate reason, like that's the point. That's the point of a conversation. The reason why we learn to talk is to solve problems.
Yes.
And like, if you're not talking, just yelling and not listening, like, you're never going to solve that problem.
I agree.
So like, yeah, I mean, I'm not vaccinated, but it doesn't mean like I'm racist. You know what I mean? Like, that's a different thing.
Oh man, that's crazy.
Like,
there's some crazy comments going on. You know, and I do think like we have to call each other out from time to time when somebody says something and it, you know, it's straight from the hip, without any real intellectual thought behind those comments. Like, hey man, take it easy. You know, whether that's no matter who it is, no matter what level, you know, you just can't. Words have meaning. Yeah. You just can't just fire and think nothing, that it's not going to affect somebody, man. They have meaning. They affect everybody differently.
And like, I don't know. To me, the vaccine passport is a big thing. But if somebody starts off a conversation by saying like, I am 100% in support of the vaccine passport, my response is not going to be like, well, you're a piece of shit.
No.
Like, you're still a wonderful human being who has a brain that's functioning. You've come to this conclusion by some means, and it's worthwhile for me to hear those things. Not from everybody, but from a lot of people. You know what I mean? Like, there have been people that I've kind of written off in my life, like, you know, whatever. And I've learned a ton from them just by being like, what do you got to say? You know? So I think we just got to get back there. I think we got to be stronger as a society and just like stronger and kinder.
Yes.
You know, like those two things, they have to exist in tandem.
Yeah.
You know? So.
And I find it interesting too, like, you can be kind, you can be nice, but you can be firm.
Yeah.
right? It doesn't have. You don't have to be a complete asshole in order to be firm,
Yeah.
right? You can be strong with your convictions, which is fine. You treat people with a level of respect, and you can push back. Like, you know what I mean? Kind doesn't mean you're a pushover,
Yep.
right? And I think that there should be a clear delineation. Like, you treat people with respect. You know, you don't have to. You don't have to have a big burly beard and and look like a scruff to want to project yourself as being hardcore.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it doesn't always mix. So.
Mm-hmm.
On that note, guys, thanks for tuning in. I want to I definitely appreciate the time. It's always great to chat with Harrison, and I know there's lots of people out there too that are having similar like-minded conversations. And the reality is, I think Harrison nailed it on the head. Like, be kind to your neighbor, but take a stand. Quit being a pushover. As a society, we need to get stronger, and we have the ability. We just have to do it. It's just. The only way to chop a tree down is one stroke at a time. So we've got to do it together.
That's it. Cool.